Hi guys, welcome to this week's Reclassified here on Ickonic.com. This week, I've got a hell of a rabbit hole to go down with you. Literally, although I'm not sure rabbits made these holes, it seemed to be like messianic, occultist lunatics made these holes, and possibly whole cities under New Mexico and Epstein's Island. I've covered some of this in my articles and previously bits and bobs here and there, trying to put together this picture since Juliet Bryant came on the show and told us even about the fact that she woke up in a laboratory, paralysed and naked, on a lab table whilst at Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, which is Epstein's, obviously, Zorro Ranch. She has her own theories about what was happening to her there, and it's some dark stuff. But we know Epstein was involved with transhumanism, and we know that he was deeply involved with the likes of scientists and trafficking these young ladies all over the place. There was much more going on here than just the trafficking and the political blackmail information. This stuff seems to have been going into the occult, and this is what we'll be having a look at today. So trying to tie all these bits together, the first thing that I looked at was, well, where does this kind of understanding of this antichrist figure come into it? Because it seems to be this all connected to this messianic agenda that I've been talking about for a while now. David's just put a video out about these Chabad Lubavitch guys as well. They're just one of the sects involved with this. But there's a messianic agenda, and part of that agenda is this antichrist being. Now, we've had the book and the film, Rosemary's Baby, a while back, and we'll get into that today, but one previously, before that, which I believe, like Rosemary's Baby, was just maybe an update on, so to speak, but really this is an ancient ritual that appears to have gone on for a long time. So one of the first things I looked at was the book Moonchild, which was by Aleister Crowley. You know who Aleister Crowley is. He's the famous occultist, the beast, the most wickedest man in the world. I mean, things have been written about him, and you know, there's different takes on him. But he wrote a book in 1917 called Moonchild. So I'll just go over what it is, and it all connects together in quite a horrific way and makes sense of what possibly is going on here with the likes of. I mean, it goes into Scientology, it goes into Jack Parsons, NASA, New Mexico, the Trinity site, Lookout Mountain in Hollywood. There is a lot to this, so I'll try and get through it as best I can, as quick as I can. Okay, so here's a brief synopsis of Moonchild. So Moonchild is a novel written by the British occultist Aleister Crowley in 1917. Its plot involves a magical war between a group of white magicians led by Simon If and a group of black magicians over an unborn child. Can we see where we're going here? Obviously, we've got straight away, we've got the inversion of the Simon If is the leader of what Crowley's character is in this, which is, I believe, called Cyril. And they're the white magicians. Obviously, it's the inversion of black and white here. It was first published by Mandrake Press in 1929, and its recent edition is published by Weiser. It's a difficult read. I have read it. It takes a while to get the language of it. Obviously, it's a bit kind of like it's Crowley, isn't it? But it's fascinating, and it basically seems to me like an earlier version of Rosemary's Baby. So the plot summary of Moonchild, Aleister Crowley. A year or so before the beginning of World War One, a young woman named Lisa Lagouffre. Now, obviously, straight away, you're going to have a look at the Epstein survivor, who the one who really pushed this through was Virginia Giuffre. So the spelling there is quite, it's there. You've got Giuffria, which is Giuffria, Lisa, so Lisa Giuffria in the book of Moonchild, and then obviously you've got Virginia Giuffre, which is Giuffre. Now, I mean, not coincidence theorist, I can't believe that that's a coincidence there. Them names are so close together, and that is fascinating to me straight away. So anyway, so Lisa Lagouffre is seduced by a white magician, Cyril Grey, which is Crowley in the book, supposedly, and persuaded into helping him in a magical battle with a black magician and his Black Lodge. Grey is attempting to save and improve the human race and condition by impregnating the girl with the soul of an ethereal being, the Moonchild. Can you see what we're doing here? It's an ethereal being here, but this is the flip side, invert everything. This is the Moonchild, to me, is the same thing as Rosemary's Baby. To achieve this, she will have to be kept in a secluded environment, and many preparatory magical rituals will be carried out. It's all magical rituals. The Black Magician Douglas is bent on destroying Grey's plan, so they call him the Black Magician. Douglas is the baddie, but obviously invert everything. However, Grey's ultimate motives may not be what they appear, so by the end you kind of get it all twisted up. The Moonchild rituals are carried out in southern Italy, but the occult organisations are based in Paris and England, and we can see straight away there's these three places that are very much involved with this Roman Babylon esoteric cult. At the end of the book, the war breaks out and the white magicians support the allies while the black magicians support the central powers. So it's tied into the World War One, obviously, or just after World War One. But that, to me, is so close to what people are kind of suggesting. I'm not saying Epstein was up to this, but this is a theory that maybe he was trying to bring about these Moonchildren or Rosemary's Baby. And again, Juliet Bryant said she woke up on a laboratory table. She tells me in the interview to come after this, we've got Juliet on again to give us an update on her own research, that there is another person that says similar thing happened, but they haven't come out in public and said that. So it's just, this is Rosemary's Baby. So I think these are the same story. A young wife comes to believe that her offspring is not of this world. Waffish Rosemary Woodhouse, who played by Maria Farrow, and her struggling actor husband Guy, who was John Cassavetes, moved to New York City. Got New York City again there. Apartment building with an anonymous reputation and odd neighbours, Roman and Minnie Cassavet. So Roman again. This is a Babylonian Roman cult. Sidney Blackmire, Ruth Gordon are the actors. When Rosemary becomes pregnant, she becomes increasingly isolated, and the diabolical truth is revealed only after Rosemary gives birth. Now, we've got a picture here. I've used this loads of times, but that's not a coincidence to me. You've got the Rosemary's Baby dress there on Kate Middleton, I think, with her third child, and Diana, who spoke out against the royals a lot and said some stuff that aligns with a lot of what David talks about in terms of their different genetics. Diana in the middle there with an earlier version of the same dress there. That's too close to comfort, especially Kate's there, and that was William. So people are talking about William, and I've brought this up in my other podcast, and Dean Henderson talks about William possibly being the Merovingian bloodline to be the Antichrist king of the world. I'm not saying that's true, but there's different levels to this. Do they believe it? Is it true? Or do they just believe it? Or is all this nonsense? This is for you to decide. So let's have a little bit about Aleister Crowley and how he met Jack Parsons. Now, Jack Parsons is a massive part of this. Jack Parsons went on to do a ritual that was trying to invoke the Scarlet Woman who would bore this child, so the Rosemary of this child, or the Lisa in terms of Moonchild. And this all ties in. To begin the strange story of one of Pasadena's most beloved sons, we must go back a bit and begin in October the 12th, 1875. That was the birthday of Aleister Crowley, magician and occult thinker who is at the beginning of this tale. Crowley began his life work upon his introduction to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. You've just heard Donald Trump come out and say this is the new Golden Age. This is what they mean. Following the dissolution of the Golden Dawn, Crowley studied magic with a K, Kabbalah, alchemy, tarot, astrology, and yoga. Ultimately, those studies led to his taking over of the OTO, which is the Ordo Templi Orientis, which he reformed around the Book of the Law, which was a book that he said he was channeled by a kind of like alien type god figure, like an alien anyway, with the organising principle of this law of Philema being do what thou wilt will be the whole of the law, and love is the law. It's basically saying everything is love, do what thou wilt, because what you feel is what is real and what you love, and it's basically just get rid of all kind of repression on yourself and just act as you will. That appears to be what he was talking about there. It's kind of like, yeah, carnage, really. So there's a book by William Ramsey Investigates about Crowley, and it's a fantastic book, and I've just recently read that one as well, so well worth going to read that and how that ties into 9/11, all the occultism behind that. The Great Beast, as Crowley was known later in his life, had many disciples who led chapters of the OTO and performed magical rites per the holy books of Thelema. Foremost among these disciples in the United States was a young, self-educated scientist named Jack, or John, Whiteside Parsons. Born to wealthy parents among the lavish mansions of Pasadena's Million Row, Jack Parsons was a rebellious child who harboured contempt for authority and an early interest in the occult. And that's so he was very much involved with Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons, and very much kind of anti-Christian as well, which obviously Aleister Crowley was. It goes on to say in another clip about Parsons, his amazing scientific achievements aside, Parsons was an avid student of the occult. He joined the OTO's Agape Lodge in 1941. A lot happened around about 1946, 1947, when a certain state, Israel, was created, because this is all timing to this messianic agenda. He was appointed head of the lodge within a year per a decree from the Great Beast himself, so Crowley put Parsons in charge of this lodge. The appointment cemented Parsons' importance to Crowley and the OTO, and his status within the order allowed him to perform advanced magical rituals with a K, magical. In his Book of the Law, Crowley writes of the coming age of Horus. Horus is the son of Osiris. When you look at Wizard of Oz, I got this from Wayne McCroy recently in a fantastic podcast. He talks about Oz being Osiris. The Wizard of Oz is the Wizard of Osiris. This all fits in. So Crowley writes of the coming age of Horus, a time typified by bloodshed and chaos, ain't they always, which would usher in a new enlightened age. This is Donald Trump's golden age. For his part, or Nouveau Order Seclorum, which was what Musk tweeted out a few days later. For his part, Parsons wrote a ritual called the Babylon Working. Now, this is really important. So, for his part, Parsons wrote a ritual called the Babylon Working, spelt Bablon, Babylon Working. It tended to attract an elemental, which is the Scarlet Woman, who would serve as a partner in the sex magical ritual necessary to birth a moon child or antichrist. Here we go again. This is the same as the Rosemary's Baby. It's the same story. The moon child or antichrist. They're trying to bring about an elemental, a being that can, a vessel, really, for this antichrist child. And that's what I believe Kate may have been used for, and Diana may have been used for. I think they've used thousands of women through the years for this same purpose, experimenting with these magical rituals, trying to get this right. That's just my theory. I don't know. I haven't got any evidence of that. Just putting all the supporting evidence together for you guys to make up your own mind. And I believe that possibly this is what Epstein may have been doing under Zorro Ranch in New Mexico and Epstein Island, to do with his transhumanist agenda, but in a more technological transhumanist way with the technology that we have today. I believe that this could all come together in that form. The signs are there. Again, it's up to you to make your decisions and your own choices, whether this makes any sense to you at all. But it makes sense to me. I'm not saying it's true. This is a theory, but I think it's a pretty solid theory at the moment. To accomplish this end, Parsons worked with his close associate L. Ron Hubbard. Yes, that L. Ron Hubbard, to create the vortex of energy necessary to summon the element. The ritual was successful, apparently. The green-eyed, red-haired elemental appeared on his doorstep at 103 South Orange Grove late one night, ready to perform the rite necessary to create the homunculus, the Thelemic Messiah, a living being in form resembling man and possessing those qualities of man which distinguished him from beast, namely intellect and power of speech, but neither begotten and born in the manner of human generation, nor inhabited by a human soul. This is what we're talking about. So this woman came along, and he believed, Parsons, that this was the woman that he'd conjured up during this. They say it was successful, but, they believed it was successful. And this involved L. Ron Hubbard. Yes, the L. Ron Hubbard that went on to found Scientology. And this all connects in, later on as we come to this, to New Mexico and the facilities there, which I believe are underneath New Mexico, which is where Zorro Ranch is, which is where Juliet Bryant woke up, she says, on a laboratory table. It goes on to say, the birth of this moonchild was the event that would perform the real magic of the Babylon working, employing Enochian calls, angelic language, which would open an interdimensional portway. And this connects in again, not only with Solomon's Temple, but with the Trinity site and what they were doing with the atomic bomb. I think they were trying to open up portals, that's my belief. And the footage from the Trinity site Manhattan Project, so the footage of which was processed at Lookout Mountain, and I've done some research and look into that on my Some May Conspire Substack, which you can look into, but that has a massive connection. I believe they have footage of this portal being opened here. But that's just my theory anyway. So the birth of this moonchild was the event that would perform the real magic of the Babylon working, employing Enochian calls, which would open an interdimensional doorway welcoming the goddess Babylon in human form to the earth. In simple terms, Parsons was opening a gate to hell in an attempt to kickstart the apocalypse, and this would come down to, the end times and all of this messianic stuff. This was really interesting. He got in a bit of trouble, Parsons, and a guy called Foreman, for stealing something called Element X, I believe. So Parsons and Foreman were not too pleased with the austerity program that did not include at least the launching of model rockets, but the group reached the consensus of developing a working state rocket motor, but before embarking on a more complex research. They contacted liquid fuel rocket pioneer Robert H. Goddard, and he invited Molina to his facility in Roswell, New Mexico. It's all around the same place, but he was not interested in cooperating. Reticent about sharing his research and having been subjected to widespread derision for his work in rocketry, they were instead joined by Caltech graduate students, one of which was a William C. Rockefeller and a Rudolph Schott. Schott's pickup truck transported their equipment. Their first liquid fuel motor test took place near the Devil's Gate Dam. Now this is really important. The Devil's Gate Dam seems to be one of the places they believe was a portal. In the Arroyo Seco on Halloween 1936. Parsons' biographer John Carter describes the layout of the contraption as showing. I won't go into that, but this is really important. So he was in with L. Ron Hubbard there, and they were doing these things. So L. Ron Hubbard and the Babylon working, 1945 to 1946. Have a look at that time. When was Israel founded? 1947. It all connects in. So about L. Ron Hubbard. Now dissociated from JPL and Aerojet, Parsons and Foreman founded the Ad Astra Engineer Company, under which Parsons founded the chemical manufacturing Vulcan Powder Company. Ad Astra was subject to an FBI investigation under suspicion of espionage when security agents from the Manhattan Project, Trinity site, New Mexico, discovered that Parsons and Foreman had procured a chemical used in a top-secret project for a material known as X metal. X again. Saturn, obviously Elon Musk is obsessed with X. Again, this all ties in. X metal. This X seems to be like a code for the project, and obviously we know X is Saturn. But they were later acquitted of any wrongdoing. During the Manhattan Project, the name tube alloy was used to refer to natural uranium in the refined condition. This term is still in occasional use. Uranium was also codenamed X metal, so it's tubular uranium. During World War II, similarly enriched uranium was referred to as oralloy, which was Oak Ridge alloy, and a lot of these supercomputers now are at Oak Ridge. I believe there's a Google one there, I'm not sure, but I'm going to be looking into that as well. And depleted uranium was referred to as depleted alloy. This is about the actual final ritual now of the Babylon working ritual. So this was L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons. Their final ritual took place in the Mojave Desert in late February 1946, during which Parsons abruptly decided that his undertaking was complete. Done. On returning to the parsonage, he discovered that Marjorie Cameron, so this is the lady, the Scarlet Woman, an unemployed illustrator and former Navy again, had come to visit. Believing her to be the elemental woman, so the birthing, the Babylon, the woman, who birthed this Antichrist child woman, a manifestation of Babylon. So, believing her to be the elemental woman, a manifestation of Babylon that he had invoked, in early March, Parsons began performing sex magic rituals with Cameron, who acted as his Scarlet Woman, while Hubbard continued to participate as the amanuensis. So, the Scarlet Woman here could be, in this context of this theory, connected to Kate Middleton, not Kate Winslet. My heart will go on. Kate Middleton, Diana, and as we come to later, possibly Charles Manson believed that Sharon Tate was another one of these women, and I believe that there is a possibility that Epstein was using some of these women as Scarlet Women to reenact this, but with more of a technological transhumanist way about it. He was always surrounded by scientists. Unlike the rest of the household, Cameron knew nothing at first of the Parsons' magical intentions. I didn't know anything about the OTO. I didn't know anything that they had invoked me. I didn't know anything, but the whole house knew it. Everybody was watching to see what was going on, so she was unaware, apparently, of going in. But, I mean, she was from the Navy, so take that with a pinch of salt. Despite this ignorance and her skepticism about Parsons' magic, Cameron reported her sighting of a UFO to Parsons, who secretly recorded the sighting as a materialization of Babylon. So, again, we have this sighting of a UFO, and when you listen to the interview later on with Juliet Bryant, she talks about seeing a UFO at Zorro Ranch and asking Epstein about UFOs and aliens, and him acting very strange in response. Inspired by Crowley's novel Moonchildren, so there you go, Parsons and Hubbard aimed to magically fertilize a magical child through immaculate conception, which when born to a woman somewhere on Earth, 9 months following the working's completion, would become the Thelemic Messiah embodying Babylon. To quote Metzger, the purpose of the Babylon working was a daring attempt to shatter the boundaries of space and time. This is the rainbow. Facilitating, according to Parsons, the emergence of Thelema's Aeon of Horus. Horus, again, is the son of Osiris. Osiris is Oz, Wizard of Oz, the rainbow. The rainbow is a Noahide doors because it reaches from this Earth to that Earth because it covers all the light spectrum, the visible light spectrum. I've just put out today that MSNBC's logo is the total inversion of the visible light spectrum because they're inverting what you see, and what you see you believe as your reality. When Cameron departed for a trip to New York, again, Parsons retreated to the desert where he believed that a preternatural entity psychographically provided him with the Liber 49, which represents a fourth part of Crowley's The Book of the Law, the primary sacred text of Thelema, as well as part of a new sacred text he called the Book of Babylon. Crowley was bewildered and concerned by the endeavour, complaining to Germa of being fairly frantic when I contemplate the idiocy of these louts. So Crowley wasn't very happy that they were doing this stuff, so that was where they kind of split off with Crowley, but it's based on the Moonchild book, the whole Babylon working ritual, and I believe that's what they were doing, possibly. My theory is that they were possibly doing this under Epstein's Island and Zorro Ranch. And there's other reasons to back up why I believe this may be a possibility. Again, this is a theory. I'm not claiming to know this for sure. So a place that I want to look into is the place that's called the Devil's Gate. So this is a great article here about the Devil's Gate. And this lady went to have a look at this place. And there's Osiris phallic symbols everywhere, all over the place. And it's a creepy, creepy place. But this was supposed to be a portal. And Parsons and Hubbard visited here from what I can understand. And did some rituals, but perhaps not the Babylon working ritual. Definitely not the last attempt at it, which took 11 days, which was Crowley's number. There are so many urban legends about this area that it's hard to know where to begin. Others claim that the portal to hell opened when Jack Parsons came into the picture in the 1940s. Jack Parsons, a rocket scientist who co-founded the Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL, located just north of the dam, so it's very close, was an infamous occultist with ties to Aleister Crowley and fellow occultist and Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. Together, Parsons, Crowley and Hubbard believed that the Devil's Gate area held great magical power and energy that could increase their own powers. Many believe this is why Parsons chose this area as a location for JPL, so his jet propulsion lab was very close by. It was the perfect place for these three men to conduct their magical rituals and work on their project that was referred to as Babylon Working. Now, Crowley wasn't happy that they were doing it. Maybe he wasn't happy that they were doing it on their own, but there was a disagreement here about this, which was a summoning of the entity known as Babylon that would aid them in creating an antichrist, a child who would eventually destroy mankind. Now, I don't believe this stuff is true, but I believe they believe this stuff is true. So this, where it locks in to Scientology, obviously. If you go to New Mexico, you will find a place called the Church of Spiritual Technology, a blue building, which is the Shekinah blue protection. It looks like a facade on the front, and these are the vaults where they keep L. Ron Hubbard's secrets, and he's supposed to be cryogenically frozen in there. I don't know how true that is. So the Church of Spiritual Technology is a California non-profit corporation incorporated in 1982, which owns all the copyrights of the estate of L. Ron Hubbard and licenses their use. CST does business as L. Ron Hubbard Library. The Church of Spiritual Technology points to Hubbard as the focal point, with the structure designed to realize what Scientologists understand to be his vision. The stated purpose of the archive in CST, according to the church, is so that future generations will have available to them all of L. Ron Hubbard's technology in its exact and original form, no matter what happens to society. It's supposed to actually withstand an atomic bomb going off. The church places prime value to Hubbard's volumes of works, and because of this has instituted the CST to engrave the entire corpus of Hubbard's original text on steel plates. So the steel plates there. The most famous example is the Trementina base, an underground vault built in a mountainside near Trementina, New Mexico. Now, this is the one I'm talking about, the Trementina base. This is not that far. It's about 2.5 hour drive from Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch. This is an underground vault. And we know now that Crowley was connected in with L. Ron Hubbard and Parsons, and L. Ron Hubbard and Parsons definitely tried to do this Babylon working ritual together. They had a fallout later on when they, I think Hubbard nicked Parsons' girlfriend or wife and ran off with some of his money in a boat. But they tried to do this ritual, and now you're looking at Epstein's Zorro Ranch, 2.5 hour drive from this Trementina base, which is L. Ron Hubbard and Juliet Bryant, and perhaps one other person saying they woke up underground in a facility owned by Epstein. I don't know, it's a theory, but things start to come together. It is marked by a CST logo visible only from a high altitude and was built in the late 1980s. Former members claim that the purpose of CTS archival efforts is to ensure that Hubbard's work survives a nuclear apocalypse, or when you decide to have one of them. If you keep mucking around with nuclear energy, then you probably will have, and weapons, and reform civilization. The church believes there's no apocalypse. It's not an apocalypse, you're just blowing people up. The church believes that these plates will last beyond 1,000 years and that Hubbard's teachings will be vital for rebuilding civilization. You can see it here. All of this end-time nonsense, all this messianic nonsense, all this antichrist nonsense fits in with these different layers. All of these different secret societies come together around this whole narrative, which is a messianic new world order, new age, golden age of Saturn order narrative. And these guys who believe this stuff are deeply connected in with Donald Trump, Putin, Netanyahu, Zelensky, all the major players, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard's even been seen with them. Alan Dershowitz will come in later because he was obviously the lawyer and close friend of Jeffrey Epstein. He's in with Chabad Lubavitch as well. So, guys, there's much more going on here than just trafficking by the looks of it. Again, I have no actual proof of this, circumstantial and researched evidence, but you get to make up your own mind, and I know one day we might find out whether this has any truth to it at all. Maybe it doesn't, but there's enough there to warrant further research. Former members of the church also claim that the symbols in the logo are guided markers for Scientologists returning from other parts of the universe. Down here, come down here, New Mexico. This is where we were blowing shit up, and you can see a picture there of the logo on the floor there. It looks like an owl's face to me, or a bat in a bumhole. This is the Trementina site, so clearly that looks like a facade to me. If I was going to draw, if I was going to make a house for toy dolls, it would look like that. The blue roofing is the Shekinah protection that we went over a couple of weeks ago. They believe the blue protects them from the evil eye, so basically people finding out what they're doing. Here, this was really interesting. That could be... So this is Zorro Ranch, where Juliet says she woke up paralysed and naked on a lab table. Well, it's clearly risen, so it wouldn't be surprised if there's some stuff underneath it. That logo there could be the Hollow Earth logo. I'm not saying the Earth is hollow. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that they use these principles and invoke these memes to bring about this understanding, so they may have several layers, because that usually, when you drop a stone in the water and it makes that ripple effect, that shows you how many layers deep that would be. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 would be right, because that's the Kabbalistic number. And there's 7 levels below Dulce Base. Here again is Zorro Ranch with the Z there on the front. And that's where Juliet said that she experienced this time of waking up underground. This is all very close to each other. Zorro Ranch Road, Trementina, 2.5 hours basically by car. So imagine how quick it is by helicopter or private plane, or underground shuttles, which we know Elon Musk was looking into with his boring company. So I believe this is all going on underground myself, and that's what I believe. I have no proof of that, but there's enough sort of circumstantial evidence to at least question this. Zorro Ranch Road, Trementina, 2.5 hours. Trementina, again, Church of Scientology. Zorro Ranch, Jeffrey Epstein. L. Ron Hubbard, Jeffrey Epstein. L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons, Babylon Rising. Or Babylon Working, sorry, as a film. And here we have Dulce Base, or Dulce Base. That's a 3-hour drive, so not much longer. And that again, drive, not private plane or private helicopter or going underground. And that's supposed to have 7 layers. And we all heard about Dulce Base and the perhaps hybrid beings underneath there. And that has 7 layers too. Dante's Inferno is to do with that. And Dante's Inferno, the actual level that is hell, is actually not fiery. It's cold. Icicles, because they invert everything. So hell could be, it seemed to be, from what I've been told by some other researchers, that hell was really winter when you look at the biblical texts, and that's why it's cold underneath. So there's Los Alamos National Laboratory now, 1 hour and a half from Zorro Ranch. So that's another underground facility that's supposed to have all of these kind of things going on. They're only about 2 hours, 1.5 hours away from each other by drive. And I'm not talking about what's going on underground. If there are these kind of boring company type shuttles that other kind of people that have been to Dulce Base and spoke about it said that there are. This could all be going on underground. I don't know for sure. Again, Zorro Ranch to Fort Craig Historic Site is where they did the Manhattan Project, the Trinity site, which I believe where they possibly opened up a portal, which again connects back into L. Ron Hubbard, well, definitely Jack Parsons as well. And that connects back into Columbia University, where they stored the Large Hadron Collider in what used to be the vaults of a insane asylum there. And that's got bluish roofs as well. So this is from Juliet Bryant. I know I brought this stuff up before, but we're gradually piecing these things together, and I think that other people have far more information than me, will know more, but we need to go over this stuff again and again to try and put bits of the puzzle together, because it takes time. So this is Juliet Bryant. I'm going to put it out there right now. I woke up in a laboratory, paralysed and naked on the table. I would like to be lie detected, and I know she's tried to get people lie detecting her, and people have either, from what she says, screwed her over with money or not gone through with it. So she says, I would like to be lie detected about this. These people were doing something, and they don't want anyone to know. They were doing something else there. And this is the same place she said she saw a UFO. She brought up that you'll see in the interview come in, and she brought up aliens with Jeffrey Epstein, and he kind of acted really strange. She also says she met the director of the island there, and they were watching one of his films. I think it was The Rock that night. She explains this in the interview. And then she was suddenly locked out of the house after going out for a cigarette, and she didn't really know why for 15 minutes. All very strange, but that's from Juliet herself, who is a confirmed survivor of Epstein's, and she's been paid compensation for it. So this isn't just rumours, this is her she has been paid as a survivor of Epstein's. So this is more than 5 years old. Would be. He's dead, apparently. And we're not quite sure if he actually is. It was that him in the actual prison. Epstein reportedly hoped to develop a super race of humans with his DNA. It goes right back into the Moonchild again. Right back into Rosemary's Baby again. Registered sex offender hoped to seed human race with his DNA by impregnating 20 women at a time. How would you do that at a time? New York Times reports. Though there is little evidence the scheme ever progressed beyond fantasy, well, I would say that it wasn't a scheme. It wasn't a project. This was an age-old magic with a K, or satanic occult ritual that was once called Rosemary's Baby or Moonchild, and it was Babylon working. I would suggest that was possible. I'm not saying this is true, but it definitely has correlations here. Jeffrey Epstein, the wealthy financier accused of sex trafficking, planned to develop an improved superhuman race of using genetic engineering and artificial intelligence. This is where Elon Musk would come in. This is where the likes of the Google guys will come in. You have the transhumanists, the Peter Thiels of the world that are surrounding Donald Trump in his new golden age right now. Genetic engineering and artificial intelligence. So I think they're going to use technology, the tannin iver, which I mentioned in last week's show, which is the connecting element that allows this entity to come into this world, which was Lilith's steed that she rode to meet Samael to create the beast, which you can go back and watch last week's episode and it goes more into that. This is what they're using, the technology now, and I believe they're using this technology for many things, but one of them possibly would be to recreate this Babylon working ritual of Crowley's and Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard's. In the aftermath of his 2008 sex trafficking conviction, Epstein hoped to seed the human race with his DNA by impregnating women at his ranch in New Mexico. Yep. It's all there, isn't it? One of his properties where young women, including minors, were allegedly abused. The newspaper reported in a major investigation. So where was this going on? Juliet says she woke up underneath New Mexico, she believes, on a laboratory table, as we said before. And these guys are saying Epstein hoped to seed the human race with his DNA by impregnating women at his ranch in New Mexico. You know, the things come together quite quickly. Though there is a little evidence the scheme ever progressed beyond fantasy, prominent scientists, including the late Stephen Hawking. Well, we know Stephen Hawking was on the island, and we know Stephen Hawking was some reason on in the submarine with Ghislaine Maxwell. To be fair to him, he probably didn't have a choice as to where he was when he was in the physical state that he was in. So, you know, you take that with a pinch of salt. He might not wanted to be there, but he was definitely there. Regular attended dinners, lunches and conferences held by Epstein, the Times said. Epstein has long been accused of sexually abusing underage girls. He also has purported connections to Donald Trump, Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew. I would say, yeah, all of that obviously is true. We know they has connections to that, but Donald Trump was, I will give him that, it was one of the I think he was the only guy that actually came forward to give evidence against freely and wittingly against Epstein. So that's not clear cut as it seems. Bill Clinton was massively involved with him, we know, and I think Juliet was with Bill Clinton at a speech. And Prince Andrew, this is where I think it will probably connect into the Rosemary's Baby stuff in terms of Kate Middleton and Princess Diana, in terms of them being this Babylon figure or this Scarlet Woman. There's definitely a royal connection there, if nothing else. It might be nothing to it, but you know, Virginia Giuffre said she was with Prince Andrew, I believe, and I think that's the famous picture. So this was what really got us started on looking into this, was the blue butterfly and what it meant. And we go into this again with Juliet Bryant in the following interview. But there's two versions of what it could be. Now, it could be Lilith, which was the first wife of Adam, who rode the steed Tanin Iva to meet Samael after she split up with Adam and become the beast. Or it could be Psyche, which has a different kind of prospect to it, which I'll go into in a bit. So Epstein victims and the blue butterfly symbol. So Virginia in her logo. So Virginia Gouffre uses the blue butterfly as a logo. Sarah has a tattoo of it. Juliet Bryant put it on her diary a year before meeting Epstein. Epstein started the Butterfly Trust in 2014 to pay off the victims. The investigation discovered that Deutsche Bank had sent 120 wires totaling US 2.65 million, so it's 3.9 million in dollars, for Epstein to the Butterfly Trust to pay off basically people or facilitate some of this stuff. The payments were justified as hotel expenses, tuition and rent, as well as settlement payments of more than US 7 million and legal expenses of more than US 6 million. So the Butterfly is massively involved with this. And this is where I found really interesting. I was like, no way, this is too much. So this is a section from Aleister Crowley's Moonchild. And this is where the young girl, Lisa, I believe, is going with Cyril, who is Crowley really in the book, to this place where they're going to do these kind of these rituals. So an hour's walk brought them to the foot of a long stairwell, damp stonework, narrow between high walls, that led vertically and steep into the very crest of Pilisopo. One could see the old church amid its clusters of houses. Cyril pointed to a house a couple of 100 yards north of the church. It was the most attractive building on the hillside. It's on a hillside, so they would imply that there's something underneath it, possibly. The house itself was not large, but it was built like a toy imitation of one of those old castles. Or what does Trementina look like? What does the Church of Spiritual Technologies front look like? It looks like a toy imitation to be of a house. A toy imitation of one of those old castles that one sees everywhere on difficult heights throughout most of southern and even central Europe. In a word, like a castle in a fairy story. It looked from below, owing to foreshortening, as if it were built over a sheer rampart, like the Potalat at Lhasa. But this was only the effect of merging a series of walls which divided the gardens by terraces. That sounds like a maze. And then Lisa cries out, "Is that the butterfly net?" cried Lisa, slapping her hands with delight. "That," he dissented, "is the net. The place where they were going was named the butterfly net." And Lisa named it the butterfly net, I think, in earlier on in the book. That was her name for it. But is that the butterfly net? You've got the Butterfly Trust, you've got the blue butterfly there, the butterfly of Lilith, the butterfly of Psyche. Now, this was even more disturbing. Now, a person I know has written a book about the Manson family, and that it was trying to explain it, that it was a robbery gone wrong. I've never believed that for 1 minute, that it was a robbery gone wrong. There's too many elements that lead into the occult. So Manson had connections with the OTO. Very slight connections of one of their kind of outskirt groups. But he would have been aware, I think, of this Babylon working ritual and what they were trying to do. So when it was revealed in the tabloid press that Manson might have been an associate visitor of John Brayton's OTO, McMurphy promptly informed on Brayton to the FBI, almost certainly to avoid his own affairs being investigated too closely. He also furnished journalists with information about Brayton on the Solar Lodge. So the Solar Lodge was like, some say it wasn't an official lodge, but some say it was. But Manson visited that lodge. In return for his favour, Ed Sanders made no mention of McMurphy in the first edition of this book on the Manson affair, the family. More recent editions of the family also exclude any mention of the OTO as well. Earlier, Sanders reported that at least 5 separate sources informed him that Manson was involved with the Solar Temple Lodge. So that's where we get the possible connection to Manson there, and the Solar Temple Lodge, which would be the OTO, connected in with this belief system of the Babylon working ritual. Now this will come to make sense in a minute, why I think that there's a possible reason why what happened horrifically to Sharon Tate possibly happened. I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying that there is an evidence here to suggest that there was an occult reason for this horrific thing. Solar Lodge was a magical organization in California that was established in 1965 and withdrew from initiatory activity in 1972. It was based on the ideas from the curriculum of AA, or I think it's called the Silver Star, an order that was established by Aleister Crowley. According to Frater Shiva the Destroyer, Solar Lodge was set in motion by the initiation of Georgina Jean Brayton, Soro Korokonos, I believe that's his like magic name, by Ray Birmingham, Frater Aquarius, in 1962. In 1965, shortly before his death, Burlingame instructed Brayton to initiate other people into the lodge, which she did, expanding Solar Lodge in the 1960s to over 50 countries. So Solar Lodge appeared to be the place that Manson at least visited, maybe was a member of, perhaps. One of the most infamous crimes in American history shares a profound connection with Rosemary's Baby. Polanski's own pregnant wife, actress Sharon Tate, was murdered by the Manson family alongside 4 other people at Polanski and Tate's Los Angeles home. So Polanski was the guy who directed Rosemary's Baby. Orchestrated by a notorious cult leader and serial killer Charles Manson, the murders shook the country to its very core. The killings took place in August 1969, when Rosemary's Baby was still showing in some theatres, and Polanski wasn't the only link between the fictional frights of the film and the real-life horror that struck Hollywood. One of Charles Manson's motives for ordering the murders was to ignite his prophesied helter-skelter race war, in which Manson claimed the black people would violently rise up against the white people. In a flimsy attempt to frame the murders as part of the Black Uprising, Manson's followers scrawled messages in blood at the scene, including helter-skelter. The name was taken from a track from the Beatles' White Album. Now, the White Album apparently was written when I think the lady that played Rosemary's Baby in the film was present. I may have got that wrong, but we'll have a look. It does say that in a minute. The name was taken from a track on the Beatles album, Beatles' White Album, released in November 1969, which Manson believed to contain coded messages about the impending race war. Manson family member Paul Watkins later said that after the album was released, the cult listened to it around a campfire for days on end while Manson interpreted the lyrics for them. So the White Album is very important to these guys. This is, bless her heart, Sharon Tate, who was murdered, and she was pregnant at the time. Now, did Manson believe that Sharon Tate was one of these women that was being used for this Antichrist thing? Because he was part of the Solar Temple, was there at least, and he would have known of the Babylon working ritual, possibly. I mean, this is all, again, I don't know if any of this is true, but there's more going on here, I think, and it has to do with all of this stuff. Director Roman Polanski is perhaps the darkest element attached to the film. In 1977, Polanski was arrested and charged with drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl. He pled guilty to a lesser charge, but fled the country before sentencing, and since spent decades evading extradition to the United States to face charges. They could extradite Julian Assange, but not Roman Polanski for this. So he directed Rosemary's Baby, and his wife was killed by the Manson family. It may not have been anything to do with what I'm saying, but, you know, you make up your own mind. So this is the third temple, and I want to just bring into this part why they believe all of this stuff. So the Antichrist would live in the third temple, which we've gone over many times, and this comes into the Chabad Lubavitch guys and all this messianic nonsense. The third temple refers to a hypothetical rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. It would succeed Solomon's temple and the second temple, the former having been destroyed during the Babylonian siege of Jerusalem in c. 587 BCE, and the latter having been destroyed during the Roman siege of Jerusalem in 70 CE. There's no evidence that these were destroyed, and they were both destroyed apparently on the 9th of Av, which is so is it the 11th of Av or the 9th of Av? I think it's the 11th of Av. No, it's the 9th of Av, so the 9/11 or 11/9. And the fact that they would be both destroyed on the same day, which is partly connected to the sigil of Saturn, is ludicrous. The notion of and desire for the third temple is sacred in Judaism, particularly Orthodox Judaism. It would be the most sacred place of worship for the Jews. The Hebrew Bible holds that Jewish prophets called for its construction prior to or in tandem with the Messianic age. And here we go again. The building of the Third Temple also plays a major role in some interpretations of Christian eschatology, and it does. And that's why you have the Christian Zionists, the guys of Donald Trump and all of these guys, and Peter Thiel in with these guys pushing this agenda. Now, this isn't all Jewish people don't believe that this has to be done. This should be done by man. This should happen naturally. These are human beings making this stuff happen against the wishes of most Jewish people. The third temple will exist during the Great Tribulation. Daniel refers to this temple when he says that the prince who is to come, which is the Antichrist, which is the Babylon working, was again a ritual to bring forth the scarlet woman who would birth the Antichrist, will enter it and stop the sacrifices in the middle of the tribulation. Just hang on a minute. The Apostle Paul mentions it when he declares that the man of lawlessness will profane the temple by entering it and declare himself to be God. The third temple is also mentioned in the book of Revelations when John is told to measure it, a symbolic way of telling him to assess its spiritual condition. This is all Hermetic principles and to do with spiritual evolution, and they've just basically turned it into this story and then taken it literally. So this all comes back to Jeffrey Epstein in the more modern age. And there is connections here. Ed Hud-Barak met with Jeffrey Epstein dozens of times and flew on a private jet. So he was the former Prime Minister of Israel. And he's visited the disgraced financer and child abuser about 30 times in 2013 to 2017, including 2014 private flights to Florida. Former Prime Minister Udak Barat met with the late disgraced financer and child sexual abuser Jeffrey Epstein, and he was convicted at this time dozens of times beginning in 2013, according to a new report on Wednesday, the Wall Street Journal says, and that was from 4th of May of last year. So these guys are all around Donald Trump at the moment. Well, Alan Dershowitz is not, but they're all connected to Epstein to some degree. Donald Trump, obviously, is going to be the next president, and he's there at the Chabad Lubavitch gravesite of the Rebbe on October the 7th, the anniversary of when Hamas were allowed into Israel. And Netanyahu openly talks about supporting them so there wouldn't be a separate Palestinian state. He said that years ago. RFK Jr. is there with Shmuley in front of the Rebbe's picture there, and we all know that Shmuley was very much in with RFK recently. And Alan Dershowitz there speaks openly at the Chabad events, and he says, "I will never forget the experience with these Chabad guys." And he obviously was the lawyer and close friend of Jeffrey Epstein. So there is a connection to this Chabad lot. This is the blue Shekinah roofs on Epstein Island. All of them are blue. So what's going on underneath there? We know that Jeffrey Epstein had 50k of cement trucks brought into his island 3 weeks before he was exposed. So what was he filling in? You know, this is not hard to put together. What were they doing underneath these places, I believe? So plot thickens, folks. This is a bit blurry, this one. Jeffrey Epstein Island. The FBI has multiple skeletons found in water around the island. The island is in the US Virgin Islands, and it used to be a military submarine base. Still has a submarine base under it, apparently. I do think it has a submarine base underneath it. Ghislaine Maxwell had a submarine license. So does Richard Branson, who's not too far away. And I've done this before. St. Thomas Island, another submarine port, which is not too far away. So they can get to these things underwater. And underwater, as I said before, in a previous episode, is the protection of Shekinah, the blue protection of the Shekinah under the water. The fish never close their eyes. They see everything. And that's what it is protection from the evil eye underwater. So I believe this is underwater. This stuff was possibly happening underwater here in the Caribbean. And in New Mexico, it was happening underground with all of those different facilities. Dulce Base, Los Alamos, Trementina, the Trinity site, the Roswell crash, all there in New Mexico. Happening around very similar times as well of this Babylon working ritual. I believe this is just an extension of that. That's my belief. I have no evidence to prove that, certainly, and it's just a theory at the moment. but we'll see. Maybe one day we'll find out the truth. They even have a yellow submarine. The incredible world found under the sea appears right before your eyes through the glass bottom of a yellow submarine. According you aboard, you will see things you've never imagined. The colourful underwater fauna of the flora of St. Bart's. St. Bart's is an island right close to Jeffrey Epstein's. I've covered this, and it was a very regular place for the likes of P. Diddy to visit and have parties, and the likes of Dr. Phil. And there even is a Rockefeller kind of old mansion there, which someone found an old white rabbit at as well when they explored it. So this is all around there. Modern rebuild efforts. In mainstream Orthodox Judaism, the rebuilding of the temple is generally left to the coming of the Messiah and to a divine providence. So I wanted to put this in to show that not all those of the Jewish faith believe that they should be doing these things. They should be happening by divine providence. So, modern rebuilding efforts. In mainstream Orthodox Judaism, the rebuilding of the temple is generally left to the coming of the Jewish Messiah and to divine providence. A few organisations representing a small minority of Orthodox Jews, so this is a small minority of this Messianic guys, want to realise construction of the Third Temple in present times and making it happen. The Third Temple Institute, the self-proclaimed Temple Mount Administration, and the Temple Mount and Eretz Yisrael Faithful Movement each state that its goal is to build the third temple on Temple Mount, on Mount Moriah. So this is a very small faction of this belief system feel like they should be actually doing it, and most of this faith, of the Jewish faith, believe that they should be leaving this down to natural circumstances. So here we go again. So this is the Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts, and up there in the top left-hand corner is Aleister Crowley. Yes, he is. So that's another connection there to the Beatles there. And so there was an influence of Crowley on the Beatles. And then, again, let's go back to Charles Manson. There is an obvious link from Charles Manson to Rosemary's Baby. I didn't know this. John Lennon had an apartment in the Dakota, which is where they filmed Rosemary's Baby. And the bulk of the White Album was written in India during a retreat. And at that retreat was Mia Farrow. Mia Farrow played Rosemary in the film. It's insane, isn't it, really? So she was there when they were recording... writing that album in India. And John Lennon was at the Dakota building, and he was shot on the doorsteps of the Dakota building as well, whilst recording an album with Yoko at the time. And Dave Geffen was the person who went and found Yoko at the hospital and took her wherever she went, I think back to the Dakota. The Dakota building is obviously where they filmed Rosemary's Baby, and that's where John Lennon was shot. And the guy that shot him had a I copy of Catcher in the Rye. All this stuff just comes together. All this MK Ultra stuff. Rosemary's Baby, 1968. So this is the building. That's the location there. The Bramford Building, the Dakota West 72nd Street, New York. Again, a lot of this is happening in New York, Brooklyn. Now, this is the Scarlet Woman. So the role of the Scarlet Woman was to help manifest the energies of the Aeon of Horus. Again, it's the vessel. This is what I propose could be the purpose of Kate Middleton, the purpose of Diana, the purpose of some of these Epstein victims. It's just a theory, but this is the evidence that I think backs up that theory so far. It's up to you to decide whether there's any truth to it or not, because it's a theory. Crowley believed that several women in his life occupied the office of the Scarlet Woman, for which we see the list below. I won't bring up the list. And now this was really fascinating. Now, Michael Bay. Juliet Bryant claims she met Michael Bay at Zorro Ranch at the time that this happened to her, I believe. Michael Bay directed a film called The Island. The Island is a 2005 American science fiction action thriller film directed and co-produced by Michael Bay and written by Kasabian Treadwell Owen, Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orsi. From a story by Treadwell Owen, it stars Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson. The film is about Lincoln Six Echo McGregor, who struggles to fit into the highly structured world he lives in, isolated in a compound, the island, and a series of events that unfold when he questions how truthful the world is. After Lincoln learns the compound inhabits are clones on the island, clones, used for organ harvesting, as well as surrogates for wealthy people. Let me read that again. After Lincoln learns the compound inhabitants are clones used for organ harvesting, as well as surrogates for wealthy people in the outside world, he attempts to escape with Jordan 2 Delta, who is Johansson, and exposes the illegal cloning movement. So this is a film that is directed by a guy who spent time with Jeffrey Epstein, that Juliet Bryant claims, at Zorro Ranch. This is Juliet Bryant saying this, where she said she watched the film The Rock. And the film is about a compound of inhabitants who are clones as well as surrogates. Scarlet Woman. And then you go and look at, well, who was the main female in it? Scarlett Johansson. Make of that what you will. The Island. It's a fantastic film, by the way, but it's just, Scarlett Johansson is the Scarlet Woman in this, by the looks of it. Perhaps. Maybe. So this is Juliet Bryant. It's a quote from what she said from an article. So Bryant says Epstein also consorted with Hollywood VIPs, including director Michael Bay, who she claims visited Epstein's private island. He had a bit of a meeting with Epstein, Bryant recalled. It didn't look like they were that close, but it looked like a business thing. An attorney for Bay, however, told the Daily Beast in an email, Mr. Bay has never been to the Virgin Islands and never dealt with Jeffrey Epstein. So that's according to Juliet Bryant, who talks about that as well in the next, in the following interview that's about to come. So, all in all, that's a lot of information to take into your head, isn't it? That is a hell of a lot of information to take into your head. Go back and watch over it, see if it makes sense to you, but it seems to me there's a possibility that the Moonchild and Rosemary's Baby are the same thing. And what they were doing at the Babylon working ritual, L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons, from the work of Crowley, is possibly what Epstein was trying to do with some of these women on the island and on Zorro Ranch. Now that's just a theory, I have no proof of that, and you make of it what you will. And does this all fit in with this messianic agenda, this Antichrist figure? Perhaps. Remember to do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and I will see you in a week's time. Take care. Goodbye. Hi guys, welcome to this week's Classified here on Ickonic.com. Today I've got returning guest Juliet Bryant. I don't think Juliet has been on the show for, it must be nearly 10 months, might even be a year now. Flies so fast time. But what she's been looking into since she last came on, and the stuff that we looked into, and especially in our first interview that we did together, especially about what was happening possibly under Zorro Ranch, is fascinating to me. And the more I look into this, the more this makes sense and fits into the transhumanist agenda, the messianic agenda, and it fits perfectly into what the likes of Aleister Crowley were doing, Jack Parsons, and all these guys, L. Ron Hubbard. And when you look at New Mexico and what's happening under New Mexico, which is where Zorro Ranch is, it seems to be to me that this makes total sense. Epstein was not just trafficking people. He was doing far more than that. And it leads into transhumanism, P. Diddy, and these islands in the Caribbean. So, Juliet, thank you for being on. You've done some fantastic research yourself. You've been very brave in coming out with this stuff yourself and looking into this. How long did it take to sort of like, you had the questions of why was Michael Bay on the island, and he created the film The Island, and we'll come to that later with Epstein. Sorry, he was on the island and Zorro Ranch, I believe, or was it just Zorro Ranch? I can't remember. One of the two.
Just the ranch.
Just the ranch. So he's just on Zorro Ranch, and you met him there, and he's denied that he's ever met anyone. But obviously, he made the film The Island. But you had all these questions about these things and why the blue butterfly was significant. Now, then we started to talk about it. So one question I've always really wanted to ask you is that why did you choose the blue butterfly to go on the front of your book? Was it just an impulse, or what came over you to do that? Or was it something that meant something a long way back and possibly this whole situation brought it out? It's fascinating to me.
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on the show again, Richard. And thank you to everyone for watching and everyone who's also helping to investigate this because as we know, these people are hiding a lot. And Richard, you've done amazing work looking into this. You've enlightened me on a lot. You've helped me a lot along the way. So thank you for that. Going back to the question of the butterfly on my diary, I'm an artist. I've always loved painting since I was a child. I used to make an artwork every day. So, my mum's also arty. So just always decorated my diary. I don't know why on earth I put the blue butterfly there. But another weird thing is, with seeing him shapeshift into the reptilian, I actually had a horrible dream when I was about 17 or 18, a nightmare, in fact, of a huge reptilian chasing me down the corridor of my house. And then my house became my boyfriend's house at the time. It was so weird. It was, anyway, sorry, it gets confused. One doesn't want to go into things like dreams. But, I saw like this thing came chasing me, like it just a little, I was 17 or 18, so it was about like 2 years before they came for me.
That's fascinating. So I'm wondering if this stuff is pre-programmed. There's definitely a DNA element to this stuff. I believe your mum was a model as well, and one of your ancestors was in NASA, I believe.
Yeah, my father's father, Harry Bryant, worked for NASA. He actually died just 1 hour before I was born. It was very,
Wow.
it was always something that we found strange in our family. But then obviously when all the stuff's been coming out, I'm starting to look more into it. Because I never met this man, Harry Bryant, obviously, because he died before I was born, an hour before. But from what I know, he wasn't a very nice man.
Right.
My dad's an amazing person. My dad's, went through a hard time with that man. Anyway, I don't know what exactly he did, but I do have like evidence of like he was here setting up space stations in South Africa. My father was brought up in Germany, just after World War II, and then they went off to America eventually. But I don't really have anything to do with that side of the family.
There's another because we spoke about. I mean, that is fascinating itself, and I do think that these things aren't just coincidence. They can't be. Um,
Yeah.
they're really not. But another person we thought of Lilith of the blue butterfly, and I'm not 100% settled on Lilith, but that makes sense in some terms, especially with the Kabbalistic kind of thing. She shape shifts into the blue butterfly. Makes total
And
sense.
right back to the Garden of Eden. I mean, my book, I wrote a whole chapter on the apple, the serpent, the bloodlines. It is very much related, but it's difficult to sort of decipher it because, a lot of history's been hidden from us. Another blue-winged creature I've seen that's very beautiful is an Egyptian one. Recently, I've been looking into that.
Okay. There is another one. So there was another one that you mentioned as well early on, and I've done some research into that because I'm always open to being wrong. And so Psyche is the other one. And what I found about Psyche was even more fascinating. When you come up to terms with what you said on the original podcast, that you woke up paralyzed naked on a laboratory table under Zorro Ranch. Now, this is what happened to Psyche. Psyche
Mhm.
was so this is what Psyche go she went to the border of Sparta where she can find a passageway to the underworld. That's where she went. She was looking for something. Upon arriving, Psyche was surprised to find that Persephone willingly
Yes,
willingly filled the box with her beauty. So she was tempted by more
Pandora's
beauty. Kind of,
box.
yeah. So then it
Mm.
goes on to say, however, on her way back to give Aphrodite the box, curiosity once again overcame her and she opened it, curiosity. Instead of finding a sample of beauty, she found a cloud of darkness that put her into a deep sleep. So Lilith connects, but this connects too, doesn't it?
It definitely does. But what I do know about Psyche is apparently she died and then Cupid loved her so much that he turned her immortal because she was
Yes.
mortal. Yeah, it's very interesting looking into Greek mythology and, history, because then you start to sort of put things together.
I wonder, Julia, if it's not just one or the other, they combine these deities into something else, which it symbolizes for them. Because I think we're looking at maybe Lilith going, "Oh, that's definitely it," when it could be a combination of the two. What do you think?
Well, I think it's symbols that have been put here for us. I don't really know exactly. I mean, we live in a pretty confusing world, right? But there's definitely a lot of stuff in history that makes a lot of sense, especially after what I went through and all the signs and symbols that have been there and analyzing them. And it's been a really interesting journey, but I'm just wondering what's going to be the end result here. because it's so complicated, and that's why it's great doing interviews with you, Richard, because you've actually looked into it, and hopefully a lot of the viewers will also do their own research into it. Because there's a lot of stuff with the whole butterfly. Also a lot of people think that I've been mono-controlled or MK altered, but I'm not. As far as I know, I'm me. I'm not working with anyone or working for anyone. I just want to try and help the world.
And
But
understand what happened to yourself. I can tell from the two like year and a half we've spoken to, you have as many questions as anybody else about this stuff.
yeah, I do. I'm, and also you see when they gave me the settlement money, I had time to sort of breathe and relax and like look into things, to breathe and like sort of find myself again. And then I wanted to find the answers for myself because it's been, it was a very complicated and confusing thing and obviously very painful, getting back. I don't even like talking about it, to be honest. Getting back
Yeah,
from the panic attacks I had, I don't like talking about that because then it'll, anyway. um, I wasn't okay when I got back from there. So I know that they did something very serious to me and I won't stop until I find out what they did.
that's the difficult thing, isn't it? And we're bringing these things up to try and find the final kind of healing from this, not to re-traumatize you or anything. When you've kind of got put out with this information, and you have done the last year, and we've been sort of supporting you putting this information out because the mainstream are going to ignore it, obviously, and most of the alternative will ignore it. What has been, is there any reaction from any of the other survivors? Because you're the only one I know who's talking about this. And we have some paintings. I think it was Virginia Gouffre, was it? Who does the paintings? Who's the lady that does painting?
Maria Farmer, who
Maria
does the paint.
Farmer. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I got the name wrong. So Maria Farmer does the paintings, and there's some lot of symbology in there, including pictures of Elon Musk, and it's fascinating. But you're the only one who's really talking about this stuff. It seems to be that something happens under Zorro Ranch and Epstein Island. Now, Zorro Ranch is New Mexico. We have Dulce Base there, the seven levels of hell. We have Animos, so St. Was it Animos National Laboratory is there? St. Animos National Laboratory. It's hard to say. And we have Trementina Base. So Trementina is the Church of Spiritual Technology. Now, this is Scientology. Now, this is where it becomes really.
That's immediately it's Scientology, right? The god Xenu who rules them all. I did a bit of research into that. It's very weird. I mean, you have to sign $1 billion contract for your soul if you want to become a Scientologist. I mean, who on earth would sign a contract like that? I most certainly would not. Always read the fine print.
Yes, it's absolutely fascinating. Scientology, I believe, plays a massive part in this, which I want to
Yeah.
bring up with you. And it connects into Jack Parsons, who was an occultist and rocket scientist, and it connects to Aleister Crowley. Now, it was Hubbard and Crowley, sorry, it was Hubbard and Jack Parsons that performed something called the Babylon working ritual, which seemed to be to conjure up a person so the Antichrist could be born through them. And this all seems like it connects. And that was then he went on Hubbard, obviously, to create Scientology, and you've got the Scientology part there, haven't you? With that Trementina base in the middle of New Mexico. So something's going on in terms of this end times prophecy and what they're doing. Epstein was involved with something end times esque that relates back to the occult, and that's what I think they're hiding from us. And what you've said about waking up in a laboratory underneath the ranch, I completely believe. But you're the only one who's saying that that happened to them. But I still believe it happened to all of
Another woman messaged me and said that there's another victim who said that that happened to her, but apparently she's dead now.
them. Oh God, yeah,
So,
yeah,
I think a lot of people are too scared to speak out. I come from a family where my mum has always told us to speak the truth, no matter what, and it's not easy, and I know a lot of other people, they don't have, parents supporting them or,
mm,
you know, emotionally and spiritually. And, I don't know why I remember it. I just don't know. It really frightens me very badly just even thinking about that.
yeah,
Something very vivid that happened to me, and I don't know how I ended up there. I just suddenly woke up in this place. And like I said, remember we wanted to do the lie detector test about it, but then no one would do the lie detector test.
yeah, yeah,
I found someone that was supposedly supposed to do it, but they wouldn't. So I would very much like to be, lie detected. Another friend said I should be put under hypnosis. I have actually tried hypnosis, but I couldn't be hypnotized. So if I could find someone that could help me with a deep hypnosis, that would be really amazing to sort of go back and find out more.
Mm, yeah.
You know,
It's,
people
I
are
mean,
very
you're
evil.
very brave speaking about these things, and I know it brings up a lot of bad memories and not nice feelings. The only way to go through it is to figure out what was going on there. And you mentioned Michael Bay, and he denies he was ever there. You say you saw him on Zorro Ranch. Now he came out with another connection I've made. He came out with the Island film, which you brought up to me. You said that he created the film The Island, which you believe that was kind of inspired by possibly
Yeah,
what Epstein was doing.
just moving around on my chair. I get sometimes I've got to move around. Sorry. Maybe it's something to do with whatever they did to me. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, but sorry, Richard. Yeah, Michael Bay, The Island, the film. Yeah, it's very suspicious that I met him there and that he denied it.
That's very odd because he cast in that film the lead actress Scarlett Johansson. Now, when you look at Crowley's work and the Babylon Rising, they were trying to bring something forward called the Scarlet Woman. Now, that can't be a coincidence.
Gosh, that's very interesting. Yeah. Gosh, you've done amazing research. I need to do more research.
It's
I
it's
need to
quite sorry, it's quite clear. So the Scarlett Johansson was in that film. It's a fantastic film. I've watched the film, but it is basically about what you were talking about. I mean, we know that Jeffrey Epstein was into transhumanism and he tried to seed like generations. We know that. That's quite openly talked about, isn't it? It's not something that's hidden.
Yeah, and with the whole case, they said that it's sex trafficking to other men. We were sex trafficked to Epstein, but the thing is, where are the other lawsuits against other men?
Mm,
You know, if all these girls, because a lot of people think that the girls are being paid hush money, but that's not true. As far as I know, that from my side of the story, from what I saw, I didn't see any other men with girls being trafficked to them. I'm sure it probably happened at some point, but that wasn't the main part of the story. There's a lot more going on here. And also with JP Morgan, there was $1 billion worth of human trafficking transactions between JP Morgan and Epstein's accounts. But why aren't the victims' names on the flight logs? If they were the ones being trafficked, why are their names on the flight logs? Then you start to realize that something else is being trafficked or someone else, maybe organs, eggs. What were they actually trafficking? Where were these human trafficking transactions? What was going on?
mm. I believe the eggs is massively part of this, and what you've been brave enough to talk about is what they're doing. What do you think they're doing with these eggs?
Well, doctors have stolen eggs before. If you look, there are articles in The Guardian around the year 2000, where doctors were stealing eggs and selling them on the black market. So, it's very hard when you think about if they were taking eggs, if they're into adrenochrome or, I suppose there are a lot of things that you could do with human eggs, right?
I
If
just
you
dread
wanted,
to think, yeah.
or if you need a new liver or, whatever you sort of, but, it's almost like, the movie Westworld, where they create people and it's very, very frightening. But unfortunately, if they can clone a sheep, they can clone a human. And you get so many sickos in this world that people will do things like that if they can,
What was
especially if they.
fascinating, Juliet, was when you pointed out that they cloned that Eve, the original girl, and then there's some people that say that didn't happen. That was through one of the cults that they. But what was really interesting when I looked into that and I watched a documentary on it, fascinating documentary, they kind of claimed that it wasn't true. But when the court case came through against the woman who claimed that this happened to, like she was part of it, when soon as she mentioned Eve was in Israel, the whole court case collapsed. It was really interesting. And obviously Israel would be where this messianic agenda is being pushed from.
Well, let me just tell you what creeped me out about that story so much. Eve was born in December 2002. I was taken there in September 2002.
Wow.
So the timelines all match up with what they're doing and what happened. And, it's very, very creepy and frightening. And again, I don't have any evidence of it. If I did, I'd probably be dead, but I do have my memories.
And
And
Lilith, so Lilith, as you said earlier, was the first wife of Adam. And she wasn't, I mean, even if you look on her bad website, she's called Woman 1.0. She was an equal to Adam and she wouldn't obey Adam.
sorry,
But
everything's now 2.0. Sorry, Rich.
yes. Well, exactly.
No.
So Eve was woman 2.0. Even on her bad website, they say that.
Oh, Eve was 2.0.
Yep.
That's very creepy. This is something definitely worth looking into. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to think about this because that's very interesting. We must definitely share more notes about this because you've done amazing research. You're very clever.
Well, it all kind of makes sense. It's just storytelling. If you can understand stories, they're playing off these biblical texts. That's what they're doing. And I'm not saying the biblical texts were written for this cause. I'm not suggesting that in the slightest. I'm suggesting they're weaponizing this stuff.
Yeah, it's quite frightening. What's 3.0 is what I want to know.
Exactly. Do you think the P. Diddy situation connects in with Epstein because they were very close? Yeah.
Definitely. I always, because when I met Epstein, he was here, with Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker. And I always sort of wondered what Chris Tucker's involvement was. But then, suddenly when Diddy got arrested, I was like, bam, bam. I just did the research and you can see that Chris Tucker and P. Diddy looked like they were pretty good friends. So, I don't know exact details, but it definitely seems like it's connected as far as, Hollywood and a lot of weird stuff going on and, you know, abusing people. So I don't know more about the whole Diddy situation, but he definitely looks like a very evil man, and I'm very glad that they caught him. There are a lot of these evil people around. It's great that they're catching them all. Recently, I was thinking it's like a domino effect. They got Epstein, then they got Weinstein, they got R. Kelly, they got Bill Cosby, who lived across the road from Epstein. Now they've got they're after a lot of these people.
Yep, yep, they are, and that's great to see. And what we had, the connection from Epstein to P Diddy is P Diddy spent a lot of time on the island of St. Bart's, which is not too far from Epstein's island. And what I wanted to speak to you, and I know we've both talked about this, the distraction of looking at the flight logs, but they're not talking about the submarines. There's a submarine port at St. Thomas, which is not too far. Submarine point by the looks of it on Epstein Island, and definitely one on St. Bart's. So it's me. They don't seem to want to look into the submarine aspect to them. Do you think there's something to that?
Definitely. Well, because it's something they can hide. Why would they want to expose that to the public? You know? And not many of us can like put on our flippers and scuba gear and dive down there and see what's going on.
Hmm.
And also, why did Ghislaine Maxwell have a submarine license? What about the Terramar project?
Can you explain to people what that Terramar project is? That's fascinating.
I need to research it more, but I saw it's like the symbol of Aquarius, and it's quite weird. They've got like weird symbology with it, and I need to actually start writing more things down because one sees so much interesting research that amazing people have done. And the thing is, it's like pieces of the puzzle.
Mm.
And it's so hard to put all the pieces of this puzzle together because it's so out there that it's like hard to comprehend or understand or believe. But, these people were obviously up to very dangerous and dodgy things.
Yeah.
And we all know that there's something under that island. I mean, when you think about it, when I saw aerial views of it, I never even saw his main bedroom. He never took me in his main bedroom. I was always taken to his side bedroom. And also, if Oprah and all these like celebrities were staying there, where were they staying? Because there wasn't like, there wasn't a lot. It wasn't like, if you go to like, you'd imagine a billionaire's house to be very like beautiful and like very, this place was very basic. It wasn't at all like you'd imagine a billionaire's property to be like. It was, so there was obviously something underneath there.
So did you feel like the top part, and actually what's quite funny is the top part is not funny, but interesting, is that the
Yeah.
top part is painted blue with the Shekinah protection, which is a Kabbalah protection. So it basically protects the gold underneath, the truth underneath. So this blue Shekinah, that's why the butterfly's blue of Lilith. So to me, I think you might be right, Julia. I think the top level is a distraction and a cover.
You're very clever to notice that those roofs are blue because I never actually put that together. But what about when that whole thing happened in Hawaii recently, and then a whole lot of people like Oprah, they had their roofs painted blue there, and their houses weren't affected by the disaster,
Mm.
apparently. I don't know if that's conspiracy. I didn't see it myself, but I saw a lot of it being put online, where roofs that were blue were sort of protected from something.
Yeah, they were putting that narrative out there, at least. Whether that's true or not, they were still putting that narrative out there that blue protects you, which is a Kabbalistic thing as well. So there is this Kabbalah element to this. And you said like, did Oprah actually stay on the island? Do you think?
Well, apparently, I mean, the flight log says she was there. I never saw her there. I never saw any celebrities on the island. I only met scientists. The only men I saw there was Epstein, and then some of the staff were men, and then the scientists that I met there. I never saw any celebrities there. So, I mean, they might have been staying there while I was there. I didn't see them. You know, that's also when I met Michael Bay at the New Mexico island. I didn't see where he was staying. I met him one night in the kitchen for like 5 minutes and then off he went. We never saw him again.
Mm.
I don't know where he was staying, which also led me to believe that there might be something underground there.
And it's not too far from Dulce Base in terms of it's about 2.5 hour drive, I believe. Los Alamos National Laboratory.
Roswell, exactly in between.
Mm.
We all know that they have these, underground weird things going on there. Another weird thing is, I actually asked Epstein when we were driving through to the New Mexico ranch. I said to him, "Has he ever seen an alien?" And he was very quite annoyed when I asked him that because there are people. He just said, "Yes, Juliet. There are lots of little green men running around all over the place." He like answered in a very weird way, because I was sort of young and dumb, naive, and after everything that I've been through, I just I'm got a bit of a loud mouth too, unfortunately. So I just said to him, has he ever seen an alien? Because, I knew I was going near Roswell, and then he was like weird and sarcastic about it.
So you were clever, smart enough though to understand what Roswell was and know where you were. So could it be that he was a bit annoyed that you knew more than he thought you knew about the area?
Maybe, I don't know. He just like didn't want to go into it. I was just asking him out of interest, and then he like sort of shut me down because I asked in front of the other people who were there, the other girls. At that time, it was like they called Nadia who was there, and it's another girl, Magali. There are a few girls there. So he didn't. I suppose he didn't want to go into detail. I don't know. He just he answered in a weird way,
Mm.
like a sarcastic way.
And didn't you see UFOs when you were there, Odds are Ranch?
Well, that's the creepy thing because it was actually the night when I met Michael Bay and he wanted us to watch The Rock, the movie that is an excellent movie, with Sean Connery,
Mm.
that Michael, he made that movie. So we were watching that movie and then I went outside to have a cigarette. And I've seen the movie before. I'm not giving him any credit for the movie, Michael Bay or any of them. I give Sean Connery credit for him to them. Anyway, I went outside to have a cigarette and then while I was standing outside, I suddenly saw these three weird lights in the sky, like very bright lights, and they were like just like it was like one, two, three, like in a triangle. And they started like spinning like so fast. And I was watching it and I was like, oh my God, what's going on here? And then I was like looking at the land, thinking, is this coming from the land, these lights? Because like sometimes you'll see a light show, from the land, but there was no light coming from the land, there was nothing for miles. And these three lights just started, and then they started like going round and round. I wish I had taken a photograph of it, but I didn't have a camera at the time. They just started flying around and then they just sort of vanished. And then I got locked out of the house. It was very weird. I couldn't get back in there for about like 15, 20 minutes.
Did you
And
tell them what you saw? Did you say that to them what you saw?
no, I was too scared of them. They weren't people that you could trust or tell anything. No, I didn't. But I tried to get back in the house and then I eventually managed because they were still watching this movie. So I somehow managed to get their attention and they came and let me back in. But otherwise I was locked out for about 20 minutes after that. And I got like it was very freaky. And that's around the same time when I have that flashback of waking up. I don't know exactly what happened there. But I know I saw those lights and I know I saw Epstein shapeshift and I know I had this, flashback where I woke up, and it's hard for me to know if it was a dream, but it definitely wasn't a dream because it was too real and it was, I just can't put a time and a place on it.
Mm. And every all the supporting evidence in terms of even the occult and esoteric evidence, the biblical evidence, if you want to take it that far, but also the evidence of knowing that he was into transhumanism and what was going on under these places. And we know there's underground facilities in New Mexico. We know that. We know there's a Scientology facility underground in New Mexico. We know that too. Because we know the Hubbard connection, the Aleister Crowley connection, the Jack Parsons connection to rockets and all of this occultism. And then obviously you've got the NASA connection with your own family. So there is something to this. There absolutely is something to this. So you're not mad to thinking this is absolutely true. Did you ever speak to anyone about remembering that flashback of waking up into a laboratory before you told us on the podcast?
No, I spoke, to my friend about it, like when after Epstein died, because it was also frightening and confusing, and so many years ago, also things were very different back in the day. One couldn't do the research that one can do now. So I was, and I was young and I was very broken from the experience, from everything that had happened. So I suppose, all these years later, I had the chance to sort of piece it together, slowly but surely with like the help of amazing friends and, because I didn't, it was just something it was like, it's something, when that all happened, I just didn't want to think about it again.
Yeah, of
You know,
course.
too much for me at the time, to be honest. And
Yeah.
then I think, now that, I've had time to heal and think and sort of piece things together and also do research, you know, it's sort of things come together and then one starts realizing more of what was actually going on.
And you've actually had a payout here, and I think this is really important to be to highlight is that they have paid you compensation, so they are agreeing that you were a victim or a survivor, as probably a nicer way of putting it, a better way of putting it, of Epstein. That is official. You're not, you're someone who's been compensated.
Yeah, I was represented by the David Boys Company, through the Epstein Compensation Fund. I actually got a second settlement through JP Morgan. I've got other lawyers now trying to get me to sign documents because apparently there are going to be lawsuits against the FBI, the US Virgin Islands, and Teterboro Airport. But I don't really know who to trust anymore, so I don't
Mm.
know who to sign with. So I'm waiting, until the right thing happens. Because the last lawyers that represented me went through more of my information than they would with the murderer. And that's fine. I don't have anything to hide, but it's a bit of a cheek if you ask me.
And what did they go through, like in terms of your information? You have to talk about the information, obviously, but what were they
Yeah,
going through?
well, they sent a data drive from America. I've got all the email track of this. I had to plug it into my computer. It went through everything I've ever done. Every email I've ever sent, they were questioning me about my dreams because, like, I'd write my dream down on a draft email. They went through everything. I think they put keywords in there. When you like put a keyword, they were trying to find out. I don't know if I had anything to hide, if they could. I don't know. I just actually don't know, and I probably
Wow.
should be out against those lawyers considering who they are. But I will question them and just let them come try sue me because I have nothing to hide.
So this is kind of like a Palantir Peter Thiel system that they've got a whole dossier on profile on you.
Yeah, and they also had me medically examined by four professionals for 6 hours, which apparently wasn't the process. They didn't do this to all the other victims, which is because I actually eventually realized if there were 200 victims that came from the fund and they had to do 6 hours at medically analyzing every victim, then they wouldn't have had time to do it within the time frame. So I started to realize, and then there was also a woman who was supposed to be helping, and she sort of mentioned that this wasn't the usual process because, I've never been through legal proceedings. And she apparently contacted three lawyers who were professionals in America, one who was working on the Larry Nassar case, to ask them if this is what you do with a sex abuse victim.
Mm.
But apparently they all canceled their appointments, is what I heard. So, I don't know how the American justice system handles victims of sexual abuse, but to go through all the information and have them medically and mentally analyzed, I don't know if that's the right way to go when someone's been traumatized.
But also, was this nearly 20 years later?
Yeah.
So what would
Um,
be that would be bizarre to even do that.
all my photographs, my negatives of my photographs, I had to send it all to New York to be verified. And I don't like sending my things away. I was very glad that I got them back. Anyway, they analyzed it and they could see that it was all legitimate because I've got the negatives of the photographs I took, you know. Um, and the thing is, that's the other scary thing is that girls who don't have evidence wouldn't have been able to claim from the fund. So you suddenly realize that there are hundreds, if not thousands.
Mm.
And also, where are all the victims? 200 girls came from the fund. Where are they all? We all know, I mean, I don't know if everyone else knows, but one of the main girls who testified against Ghislaine Maxwell, very beautiful girl called Carolyn Adriano, was found dead in a hotel room, suspiciously. It took the media 6 months to put it there. Where are the victims? Why are people too scared to speak out? See, I live in Africa, so it's different for me.
Yeah.
You know, if I was in America, I don't know if I'd be so willing to speak out.
It's now he's apparently gone, and I hold that open to whether he actually is gone or not. And Ghislaine Maxwell was apparently locked up, but I still, again, I'm not 100% sure. All I've ever seen is a green screen of her sitting in front of a green screen.
They just lock up a clone. If they can make a clone, you make a clone, you send the clone to prison. Brilliant, Then go live in one of your underground facilities.
Completely agree. And if you think that they can't make this, we had centuries ago, they had 200,000 people living in the earth inside cities. So they have these things. I mean, they were building them a long time ago. How they built them, who knows? But there is an underground facilities going on all over the world, and I definitely think New Mexico is one that people need to look in, and I think it's vast. When you were at Zorro Ranch, as you were on the island, they kind of let you kind of just wander around freely on your own. You seem to be on your own a lot. What was the kind of it like for you on Zorro Ranch?
I couldn't really just wander around freely. I mean, like I couldn't leave the property, but I could wander around the property. But it was very creepy there. And that's the one day when I took some photos of his property because he went out for a meeting or something, and it was like, and I went looking around and took some photos, with the camera because he had like the most like expensive like artwork there. And it was just very creepy. There was like also like a statue of Jesus. It was like 8 foot tall.
Mm.
Uh, Jesus on the cross. It was just very, very creepy. I went, but also I wasn't actually, I wasn't just let to go around freely because one of the girl who worked with him was following me around,
But
you
she was
know,
following you, or she was with you,
always,
following.
always. Yeah, I wasn't allowed to walk. I never walked around there on my own. No, no, no. No, yeah, this girl who worked with him was following me around.
And did you feel like you were being watched?
A photo of me there. Someone took the photo, her, the
That's what I
staff.
was thinking of. There's one of you, well, there's several of you, but there's one of you near the edge. I think it was on the island, and the sun's behind you. But someone must have taken that photo of you.
Yeah, it was either other victims or girls that worked with him. Because we always had people sort of around us, like even on the island, like we weren't really allowed out on our own or we were always being watched quietly.
Was there anywhere that you were not permitted to go to, like the temple at the top there? That seems a bit of a distraction to me. But was there anywhere that
Yeah,
you were permitted to not go to?
something like that. Because also I suppose if he said that he would have highlighted it and then I would have tried to go there. Being on an island like that's sort of confusing and the thing is also around people like that, we were very scared of them. So it wasn't like we felt like brave enough to just sort of venture off like, oh, we're gonna go check things out. They were very, very frightening people. So you just sort of, went for a little walk on the island. You didn't, and also it was like I didn't realize that there was something under the island at the time. I wish I'd known and I would have looked further. But then I'd probably not be alive anymore. So, you know, I, s- I was naive and young and I wish I'd looked further. But it was just very overwhelming and daunting being around people like that. You know, you didn't really think to go and snoop around.
Hmm.
You didn't want to be snooping around with them. No.
And did you ever, you never met Les Wexner, did you? But obviously there's a whole connection there and he's not alive anymore,
Is
is
he
he?
dead now?
Oh no,
Uh,
sorry, no, I'm thinking about who's the guy that died in jail?
you know what? Well done, Richard. You won't be alive for a long watch.
Who was the guy who's alive in, who the guy that died in jail was an accomplice to Epstein? I can't remember his name. John
Uh,
Luke, something?
Dick Brunel, yeah, the one
That's,
who owned the modeling agencies. Yeah.
yeah.
That's another creepy thing is that a lead modeling company came here and tried to take me there when I was 14. But my mum wouldn't, and I realized that Jean-Luc Brunel worked for the same company. Like there's a newspaper clipping of me from 1997. I was at a market and they came and approached me. But my mum was strict, and she didn't want me doing modeling. We didn't have a lot of money, but my mum wanted to make sure that I was educated and she didn't want me falling into any nasty traps, I suppose, too young. But they did try to take me there when, overseas when I was 14. And then it's just very creepy actually. Because what about the other girls that they do, that do get taken when they're 14?
Mm. And your mum, I believe your mum was a model. Is that right? Or am I wrong in thinking that?
Yeah, my mum was a model, but my mum is 5'3". She's a lot littler than me, a lot cleverer too. Yeah. Yeah, my mum did actually very well with modeling. Just in Johannesburg, she wasn't an international model, but she did like in South Africa, my mum did quite a few modeling jobs.
So she knew the pitfalls and to keep you away from them.
Maybe, but she hasn't given me all the lowdown on what she went through. But I don't know if my mum went through anything like that. I don't know.
I just find it strange that, not strange, but they've just found you at a market. Like do they look for people? They're scouting for people. They send people out, or do they track people for a while? You said like when the whole kind of system, they've got a whole dossier on all your life, and they went over through Palantir. They've been Peter Thiel, who's on there with Donald Trump, been doing this for decades. But do you feel like they happened upon you, or they were aware of you for a lot longer than that?
I just don't even know, how these people find people. I don't know. But it was very creepy when Kevin Spacey was filming all the young people, at the talk that Clinton was giving. Things like that. I suppose they could go through I suppose they have all sorts of ways of finding out who's who. But I just don't know more about their whole operation.
Hmm.
But there's also the bloodline thing, which we went into before as well. And I've got the O negative blood. So you know, I I don't know more, and also like you said, with my father's father working for NASA, and I wish I knew more. That's what we're doing this for, right? To find out more.
Well, we are because there's so many links, and the more you do, the more we look into, Juliet, the more it's just so like apparent, and that the main themes seem to be transhumanism. It seems to be rocketry and atomic weapons and the occult, and that seems and trafficking, obviously, of children. That seems to be something that's all connected here. And you talk about your so it'd be your uncle that was in NASA as well, not particularly
My
nice
friend,
man. Oh, your grandfather, sorry. Of course it was, yeah. Your
yeah.
grandfather was in NASA, was not particularly nice person, but you've got obviously Jack Parsons with Jet Propulsion, and you've got all of these, and then you've got Musk now pretending he knows about rockets and NASA,
Just
and they're
like he's
funding everything.
president of America, guys. Do you think Trump's the president? Trump's the puppet. Musk's got the money.
Mhm.
Why is he jumping on the stage all happy? Musk is the new president of America, in case anyone didn't realize it. Sorry, I mustn't say things like that. I could get sued.
Well, those you're allowed your opinion, and
Please
then
edit that out, Richard. And sorry about my dirty nails. I've been gardening with my little boy.
Or about your dirty nails. I I could tend to agree with you. Peter Thiel as well. These guys that are surrounding Trump at the moment, are clearly controlling him, and he has this messianic agenda through Habad Lubavitch. involves Israel, and that involves the Messiah, and that goes back into Rosemary's Baby and all of this other stuff. There was something,
Rosemary's Baby's creepy, isn't it? That story.
well, that was Polanski, and
Yeah,
Polanski, yeah.
yeah, that time got caught. Yeah, and there's another weird thing where that Kate Middleton's wearing exactly the same dress. I think you might have posted as well. Yeah, it's the Rosemary's Baby. Who was the actress in that again? It's Mia Farrow.
Yes, and she was murdered by the Manson family.
No, 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 that's Sharon Tate.
Sorry, of course it was. Yeah, sorry, it was Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate was the wife of Polanski.
Yeah, Polanski. Yeah, that's a very creepy story by Manson. Yeah, and his anyway. Yeah, it's all. It's doesn't that seem like a ritual sort of sacrifice?
Well,
If
it
you look
was.
into.
Yep, absolutely it was. I believe it was. It was I believe Manson, from what I can tell, look at the information, it's just my opinion, believed that Sharon Tate was carrying the moon child of Aleister Crowley, one of these, which is another version of Rosemary's Baby, which is Aleister Crowley's kind of version of it called the moon child.
Devil.
You what, sorry?
He thought the baby was the devil and he went and killed it.
I believe that's what I think he thought. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I think that's what he thought. Polanski obviously did Rosemary's Baby. You connect it together. He was obviously into the cult. Manson was a lunatic. In Laurel Canyon a lot of the time doing music. It all kind of fits together. The Laurel Canyon was where they processed the footage from at Lookout Mountain from the Manhattan Project, which was Trinity site in New Mexico, which I believe they opened a portal up. So
LA
it's
is so case. Do you know I was taken there? We can do a whole nother interview on that one day.
you were taken there.
Yes. But I won't talk about it now. It's another story. I was even Michael Bay even took me to his house. But we'll talk about that another time because we're focusing on Epstein right now.
So you met Michael Bay more than once. You can just say that.
Yeah, I've got his phone number.
Right. I think you mentioned that before as well. So there's this whole kind of, as I say earlier, with the island that he did, and the Scarlett Johansson being the Scarlet Woman, which is the Crowley connection there to the same story. So this all keeps coming back to Rosemary's Baby as well, trying to foster a vessel, possibly for this moon child, which would be the Antichrist figure. And then you connect it in with what Musk's doing, sorry, Trump's doing with the messianic madness in the Middle East. It makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense, whether it's
Ah,
true or not. And I'm not saying that they can do these things. I think they're mad enough to hurt a lot of people thinking they can do these things. Does that make sense?
but also, why does Elon Musk have 12 children? Just sorry to jump subject here, but also, his child who's got the becoming a trans.
Mm.
Why does he have to attack that child online? Why can't he go and sit there as a father and try and help? And I don't want to be bad mouthing anyone here, but there's a lot of weird stuff. Maybe he's trying to give birth to the Antichrist himself, because isn't his one child called like AIXI or it's got a really weird name.
Something like that.
It's just suspicious.
Yeah, and
And the
he
girl,
dressed up as the Baphomet, in the Baphomet costume with the um,
the girl looks like
inverted
a saint.
cross. Yeah.
One year.
Well, and that's Mars, Apollyon, which is the destructor. And there's a whole festival where they've got Donald Trump dressed as Apollyon walking down the street, and I think it was Italy, which is the destroyer, which is 9/11, comes from Revelations 9/11 from the abyss. So there's this whole kind of thing about bringing this antichrist devil type figure through. And every time you look at it, it's underground stuff. It's birthing an antichrist figure, and it seems to be using the vessel of these women for that sake. And every time you look at it, left, right, and center, it seems like a technological version, in my opinion, of what Aleister Crowley wrote as the Babylon Working and what Jack Parsons actually brought about. Now, Crowley didn't do it. Crowley wrote about it in The Scarlet Woman, but it was Parsons and Hubbard, who became Scientology later on, who had a fallout, that tried and did this ritual. So I think that at least I think these guys believe it. I'm not saying I believe these things can be done. I'm saying that these guys are lunatics. And I think they're trying to do a technological version of it now.
Okay, so with what you're saying is very, very interesting. But Nostradamus predicted that the Antichrist would come, and it sounded like the Antichrist would come around 9/11. I always wondered if Epstein was the Antichrist since I saw him turn into that thing. And with the Antichrist doesn't necessarily need to be born as a baby. It can be also be about a spirit possessing a body, perhaps. I mean, I'm just
No,
throwing
yeah,
ideas.
I think, Julia, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I wrote an article last week about, and I did a video about something called Tannin Iva, which is from the Kabbalah. It's a dragon that took Lilith to meet Samael and combined the two into the one being the beast. And this Tannin Iva is possibly the technology that they're able to use to, Tracy Twyman wrote, she said that technology, so she said Tannin Iva would be the way that they can possess human beings from the beyond. So I think you're onto something there.
Possession is something that's actually there, in case anyone didn't realize it. We all want to deny it because it frightens us. But you can look it up, like exorcism, it's a real thing. Look it up on Wikipedia, do a bit of research. Like magic is also real, guys. Like, don't think that it's just like David Copperfield, doing pretend magic. There is real magic out there, and there's black magic, there's ways of there's hypnotization. Like even Trump and Obama use the Erickson technique. It's a way to hypnotize people.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I want to study it more. It's pretty interesting. There's like a way of hypnotizing people, and I don't know how to do it. I wouldn't mind learning. I don't want to hypnotize people, obviously. Only if I could do good. But that's the other thing you've got to realize is that actually hypnotization could be used in a way to do good.
Yep.
And like you get dark magic, you also get good magic. The witches' war burnt, around the 1400s till 1700s. They spent many years trying to get them all.
Mm,
People actually, and where are all the books on, there are books on magic, and I think they've all been hidden out of the Vatican because a lot of people will think it's crazy, but it's not. Magic is real.
yep.
I come from Africa. Just ask my African friends about magic. They get it.
Well, these people certainly believe it, and I completely with you. I believe the information is of itself, like the Kabbalah can be used for good or ill, and all this magic can use for black or white or evil and positive. It depends on who you are and your intentions, and I think you're completely right. And definitely these guys believed it. Do you think then? Because you said that you saw Epstein shapeshift into this, and it wasn't a reptilian; it was a different type of being. And if you explain it to the audience who haven't listened to the first podcast, that'd be
I'm just
great.
getting back to the magic side of things. Spelling could be a spell.
Yes, of course it
And
is. Yeah.
what about the word and the word world? And put live backwards, and guess what? You get
Mm.
evil. And put lived backwards, and you get devil. Sorry. And then I'm sorry, Rich, I lost track there. I like anagrams. I find them very interesting. Earth is also hard if you anagram the words.
Oh, yeah. No, I find
Yeah.
them really interesting because it's a coded language, absolutely, and they invert things and turn things backwards. But when you saw Epstein shapeshift, do you think then, and saying on what we've just said there, that he was possessed?
Well, I don't know. Like it was, you know, it's just like it's such. I never even wanted to tell anyone that this happened, but I told my friends, and then we did our interview, and it came out. I didn't want, it's just something that I saw. Like his head just grew. It went bigger, like this, like okay, wait, like more like this size. It went a lot bigger, and then the eyes were big and black, like that, like each eye, like dark black, and then there was a mouth with like a tongue hanging out, and there were all these ridges on the head. Um, I don't know what I saw. I just got a big fright when I saw it because I looked at him and it wasn't him anymore. It was like he turned into something, and I've never seen anyone else turn into anything like this. And then I, decided to look away, like, and then look back, and thank goodness he went back to normal again. And I don't know how to explain what I saw there. It frightens me even. But the thing is, I saw him turn into something, and I'll never deny it. And people say, "Oh, was I on drugs or alcohol?" No, I wasn't. There was no alcohol, no drugs around Epstein, no parties, nothing like that. Unless they drugged me and I saw this thing. But even in times when I don't do drugs, I don't like them. But I've obviously tried something here or there along the way, being stupid and young, and I never ever saw anything. I didn't see. I've never hallucinated ever.
Mm.
So I just saw him turn into this thing and it gave me a big fright. And I don't really know what I saw. But obviously it made me realize that there's something else out there, and I don't know if he's possessed by something or what it was. Possessed. I wonder if he's still alive. He probably is, isn't he?
I would
So I think,
hazard a guess that he probably is, but I think what you're saying is right because it's open to anything. He could be alive. He could be a clone. The one that you could have seen could have been a clone of Jeffrey. It wasn't the real one. It could have been. It's really difficult because when you open up your mind to the all possibilities of what these guys are actually doing, you have no boundaries of knowing, and it almost like it's like what they do with the biblical text. They kind of like they can confuse you in it by interpreting it in so many different ways. So you've just got to look inside and find your truth, which you've done. And I like to say, the people who listen to this, Juliet has spoken on my show 3 times, and I've spoken to her consistently over the last year and a half, and she's never once changed her story. And I think that says a lot. And you need to understand that she has never once, every time she talks about it freely, she repeats the same stuff, and I think that's testament to the validity of what you're saying.
I will never lie. Lying is a crime. I will never lie. But also what I wanted to bring in here is Tucker Carlson. He apparently got attacked in his bed by a demon. Have you seen that, hey Rich?
Yep.
He got attacked by a demon, and he's also said that we're in a spiritual war here. I don't know exactly what happened, but I mean, I've had things where I've like woken up where I'm like can't breathe and I'm pinned on the bed. Not in many years, but back in the day. And also, especially around the time when Epstein died, I had a lot of nightmares of him and like waking up where I couldn't breathe, feeling like I was going to like choke and die. Like I've had a lot of spiritual attacks. So I understand what Tucker Carlson's saying about spiritual attack.
Mm. And the strange thing is, Tucker Carlson's seen there, and I know a bit about his background. Obviously, he's very close in there with Trump and Elon, but he's also in there. There's a video of him doing a very weird interview with Kevin Spacey. Have you seen it?
Was that? Yes, you're right. That was him that did that. Well, remember, I did my video sort of copying it with the fire next to me because
That's
I
it.
can see what Kevin Spacey's doing. He's trying to tell people, be careful. Like he's showing people magic through fire. He's
Yeah.
evil. He's got his body count. Clinton's got his body count. It was very creepy. And then, Spacey's accusers died. It's like, were they cursed? What happened? I don't know if they're cursed or murdered or what. So I don't want to I don't want people to think I'm crazy. But, there's a lot of stuff out there which is like beyond our comprehension. And these people are very evil. These criminals have many branches to their organizations.
Yep. And I don't.
So
No one's gonna think you're crazy watching this show. We go all sorts of all over the place. But I completely agree with you about Spacey. He is, and wasn't he in
the
America? Was it the beauty?
American Pie, yeah, the pedophile movie. But that was the same one, right? Where Tucker's talking to him and he says, or maybe I'm thinking of another one where he said he's going to kill them with kindness.
I can't remember what he said, but I remember he's sitting on the sofa and he's got a pillow next to him, which is clearly the Freemasonic apron. And
Well, we'll need to go research this, guys, because we see so much information these days that it's like hard to we got to keep track of the important stuff.
so, did you ever speak to Spacey? You saw him there taking photos. Did he ever speak to you?
Used to him, he wasn't very friendly, or I didn't really chat to him a lot. I just sort of shook his hand, and he looked quite annoyed, like that me and my friend were around there. Because a friend of mine came, and then she also wanted to give a portfolio for Epstein, but he only took me there.
And
But
it's all these years later, obviously, it's still very, very difficult for you to talk about because they haven't got to any truth with Epstein, haven't done anything with Epstein. And obviously the real truth of what's going on where we're digging in here, we might be wrong about a few things here, but I think the general themes I think we're right about. Um, do you see any movement forward in what we're talking about? Because the more this transhumanist agenda goes on, the more it's gonna kind of prove us right in a way.
definitely do see that. And also that's the thing is, I think it was a question from earlier, from when I was there, I didn't know about transhumanism or any of this stuff. 20 years ago, it was something that we sort of weren't sure about. But AI, no one really spoke about AI 20 years ago, did they? I mean, probably some very brilliant people, but I didn't know about it. As things are progressing and people are starting to understand more, and I actually saw a thing online the other day. They said they're going to blow up the world before they tell people who the Epstein client list are, which they're not going to do because, they try to scare people with things like this. But, apparently we're also going into the age of Aquarius. I saw this, I see information online. I'm getting, things that I've seen. And, this is the same sort of time as the French Revolution, where the people in charge get sorted out and things become more fair for people. And it's difficult going through a time like this because it's, not easy dealing with the change. But I'm really hoping that a lot of light's going to be coming to Earth soon. And
Well,
these people are going to be,
I think we're bringing the light, Julia, as people like us who are doing these stories and you bring it out and you bring out the dark into the light. And I'm not saying that as a Kabbalistic term, by the way, because that is a Kabbalistic term, but you bring out all the lies by just shining a torch on them. And that's clearly where we have to look into these dark areas, literally underground, unfortunately, to be able to show you what is happening. And if people really want to know the truth, we have to go into the darkest areas and have a look. And I think people know this stuff, they're scared to look at it. And even the ones who do this research are scared to look at it. But what else are we here for?
yeah. No, it is very, very petrifying for people. And I can understand that. I come from a home where my mum's spiritual and, into more different things. And also, I had this experience that happened to me all these years ago. But the world's definitely going into a different sort of state right now. I don't know what's going on. It's like, and also, it's quite frightening when you see these pictures of these celebrities and suddenly it doesn't look like them anymore. I'm sure a lot of people are noticing this. Like I saw a picture of Lindsay Lohan yesterday, and I'm like, that's not her. Sorry to flick subjects here, but it's like how much they're going to lie to us. You know what I mean? Sorry if it sounds crazy, but I mean, like, look at Renee Zellweger. There are a lot of Avril Lavigne. There are a lot of famous people where it's like suddenly it's like they don't look like themselves.
Mm.
It's disturbing.
It is
And also,
disturbing, yeah. Who is the guy that did the film? There was a film that come out. He played Ray Charles in one of these films. Can't remember what his name is, a black actor.
no, Jamie Foxx.
Jamie
Yes, what happened?
Foxx. He went
Yeah.
missing for like 3 months, and at the same time he went missing, a film come out called Who Cloned Jerome or Jerome,
Yes.
and
Oh my God, guess who cloned Tyrone? That one
that's
was
it,
watched.
Tyrone. Yes, and he went
Yeah.
missing. Like he was meant to be ill and life support, and no one really know what happened to him at the same time. So either it was a clever marketing ploy, or there's something more going on here, and they're hinting at actually what's happening to these people.
Well, let me just tell you that Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and Jim Morrison all died within a 10-month period. They were all 28 years old. So
Right.
now Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, and Katy Perry all dropped dead. Would we, that would be a little suspicious, right?
Mm.
Okay, so this happened, all those years ago. And then you also have John Lennon and Bob Marley dying within a 6-month period. Also weird. Two amazing icons. It's very creepy.
Yeah.
Anyway, if with their new cloning business, which apparently, it seems they have something like that going on, you'll hear stories of like Miley Cyrus died in an accident, then suddenly, and Beyonce suddenly becomes Sasha Fierce. I don't know. It's like why
Mm.
do these celebrities not die anymore like they used to? I know, like I'm obviously aware that Liam Payne, was thrown off a balcony recently, or whatever happened there. I don't know if he was thrown off a balcony. Sorry, let me not assume things here. But what? If so many famous people were dying back in the day, why is it not happening anymore? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very interesting what you say about John Lennon. John Lennon was shot on the doorsteps of where they filmed Rosary's Baby, by the way. And it was Dave Geffen who
Oh,
spent time. Yeah, Dave Geffen, who spent time at St. Bart's, who was also the manager of the record producer of Yoko and Lennon, and they were writing an album at the time. And he went and picked up Yoko from the hospital, so he was her handler, sorry. And he basically runs Hollywood, something called the Purple Mafia. And he's been at St. Bart's, which is the one P. Diddy was on, which is not far from um, little St. James Island. So there is a massive connection here with all these guys. And Dave Geffen even has a boat called the Rising Sun, which is Horus, obviously. And
Big.
so it's all there, it's all connected. But
Oh,
yeah, and obviously Jim Morrison's dad was in the military and the
Navy,
CIA.
Army, yeah.
Yeah, and then Jim Morrison dies suspiciously, and he was at Laurel Canyon where they produced the footage from the Manhattan Project from which I believe opened up a portal in New Mexico. So this all starts to
I
fit
didn't
around
know.
each other.
You know so much. Thank you so much for sharing this with me.
But
Because
it's
I need to write it all down.
and I can go through this, and I'm going to have to do a presentation on this stuff. I mean, maybe it's nothing. Maybe I've gone a bit mad, but I just
Yeah,
see it.
you're most certainly not mad. If anyone says you're mad, they're mad. And no, we're not mad, we're furious, is what
Yeah,
we are.
we are. I don't like being people being taken advantage of, and I think that these people are
Oh. Well,
disgusting,
what
quite
about all
frankly.
the blonde princesses who die early, like Princess Diana,
Hmm.
Grace, Marilyn Monroe was like a princess of America. You know, look what's happened to Charlene of Monaco. You know, I met her. She was an amazing, strong woman. I don't know what they've done to her.
What happened to her?
I don't know. Where is she? What's going on? We should
It,
actually look it up.
well, this is the same about the guy that now runs Scientology. No one's ever seen his wife, not Hubbard.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, Ron. No, it's Ron Hubbard's wife, isn't it?
is it Hubbard's wife? I thought it was. Maybe it was Hubbard's wife. Went missing for a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah, the wife went missing. She was never seen again.
Hmm.
Suspicious. I mean, like, why do so many blonde princesses end up in distress? You know, I mean, not distress, dead, actually. You know, it's suspicious.
It all kind of fits together. And I do you think that this cult, and it is a cult, that I do believe has a messianic agenda for the Middle East and Solomon's Temple, and all of this stuff about the Antichrist being born through these women that, like yourself, are being used through Epstein. I think it all connects in together. But do you think that these guys know that, hang on, they're onto us now because they're speeding up?
Um, what I started to realize is you get cycles of day and night that are short, and then you get cycles of day and night that are long. I think we've been in a long cycle of night, and I think day is coming. You know, when vampires can't survive in the light.
Hmm.
I think that's what's happening. It's almost like the world's shifting to another time now where it's, you know, things are never always perfect. You know how graphs go. They don't just go, shh. It goes like that. And I suppose that's the way of the world. We have dark times and we have light times. And I think we're coming to a time of light. Well, I hope, you know.
Yeah, and we're
I
all
really
doing our bit. Yeah. Juliet, it's been absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love chatting to you. We'll get so much out of it, and we need to do some more work together and piece this all together because we could do a 2 hour documentary of in person, just interviewing this because I think that your bravery of just talking about Epstein shapeshifting and waking up under Zorro Ranch has been the key to opening up what could possibly be going on here with him. And he is the key to what's going on with all of these lot. And this goes into everything. And I think that your little, just those two bits of information alone, I think are incredibly powerful. So I'd like to thank you for sharing this with us and also carrying on the research that you've been doing and the bravery you've shown since this happened to you 20 plus years ago.
thank you, Rich. And thank you for your amazing work, for hosting me on your interview and also for the amazing Sherlock Holmes work you do. You put Sherlock Holmes to shame.
Well, I'd like to, but it's one of those things you just think this is so obvious, and the more I look at it, the more clear it gets. So, it's to me is like, what are we going to do here on this planet? We're going to try and make it better for the people that are left, and that's what my contribution is. Where can people find you on social media and support your information and help you keep this information, your research going? Because if anyone's going to listen, they're not going to listen to me. They're going to listen to you, Juliet, because you were there.
You rather, Rich, but thank you, Rich. Well, mine's I've got Juliet Bryant on online, but also Dragon Applebee, which is the book which I'm finishing off. The dragon, the apple, and the butterfly. So if people want to find me on X, it's Dragon Applebee or Juliet Bryant. And yeah, thank you for everyone for listening, and thank you to Rich for hosting. And let's all keep digging and find more information. Let's expose these people and try to stop cruelty in the world.
So guys, remember to do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and we'll see you in a week's time here on Ickonic.com. Take care. Goodbye.